now. Well, one of the regions in the world that's done extremely well in terms of combating COVID-19 is the Caribbean. And I am more than delighted this morning to have essentially Miss Queen Caribbean here in the UK. And she's Carol Hay, and she's going to answer some questions about the Caribbean for us. Good morning, Carol.
Good morning, Graham.
And how are you doing?
I'm doing very well on a lovely cloudy day in London where I almost contemplated turning my heating on in July, and I thought, no, I won't do that.
No, well, a good Caribbean girl like you, I could be understandable, but a hard man like me that's been brought up in these harsh winters, no way, Jose.
Well, I should know better because I was born here, but I just felt really cold this morning.
Carol, the setup with the Caribbean Tourism Organisation has changed relatively recently, you know, within the last 6 to 9 months. Perhaps you can explain me what your organisation is now, on what its role is and how it relates to the CTO back in Barbados.
Well, great. Yes, I mean, the CTO in Barbados recently closed all the international offices. So that was London, New York, Toronto, and all positions are made redundant. We've been very fortunate, though, in the UK that we've always had a UK chapter for the CTO, and that was established close to 2 decades ago. And the chair of the chapter is Colin Pegler. So once it was announced that CTO was actually going to be closing its offices, which actually house the chapter then took a decision that, you know, they were going strong and they still wanted to remain in operation because they were registered separately. I decided I was going to form my own company because I figured after being in tourism for more than 25 years, it probably was time to step out on my own. So I formed my company, McKenzie Limited, no relation to Graham McKenzie, and was given the opportunity to run the secretariat for the chapter, which I have been doing with one of my former colleagues, Florian de Villas. Now, how the chapter differs is really the Caribbean Tourism Organisation in Barbados deals a lot with the whole policy and governance of tourism, while the chapter for the UK and Europe is more of a marketing arm. And for us, the key strength of the chapter is membership. We currently have 65 members, and of course, we're always seeking more members, networking, partnership, and marketing. A lot of co-op marketing opportunities take place. So what the chapter does is to provide a voice and a community for those involved in the marketing of the Caribbean across UK and Europe.
Okay, well, before we move on to, you know, how the Caribbean has handled COVID, let's just take that one up, because I know from past experience that getting Caribbean islands together to market together has not always been the easiest thing in the world. Has, if you like, severing your ties with the political side made that easier? And in some respects, with backs against the wall with COVID, has that bizarrely enhanced your opportunities for cooperative marketing?
Well, number one, we haven't totally severed our ties with the CTO in Barbados. We still rely on them a lot in terms of they already do a lot of the research, so we're not going to reinvent the wheel. We work a lot with their research. We are mindful that the countries that own the Caribbean Tourism Organisation in Barbados are also members of the CTO chapter. So there is still a lot of synergy between us, and what we're trying to do is to still maintain a very good relationship, because we don't know what future cooperation will exist with CTO Barbados. So we are working to maintain strong ties. I always say, Graham, that at the end of the day, we're talking about one Caribbean. So it's important to pool all the resources to ensuring that the Caribbean survives, and more so because we are going through this global pandemic. So the relationship is still there. Now, drilling down to what's happening in the UK and Europe regarding the chapter has always been based on public and private sector cooperation. The members include airlines, cruise lines, hotels, hotel representation companies, media, so therefore, because of that strong network and the diversity of the network, it means that we are able to do a lot of promotions and incentives and work together, because we already have within the association, the people who think very commercially, which is why it's such a good mix, because you've got the governance side of it and people who think like that, but we've also got the commercial pull, which helps us to stay focused on marketing.
Just to clarify, if you wanted to do, you don't have to go and ask permission from Bridgetown to do certain things, do you?
No, we don't. Who we seek permission or guidance from is the board. We have a very strong board running the chapter, in the UK, and we meet regularly, and we always bounce things off our board. And they, of course, will also give directives as well if they think there is something that the chapter should focus on. So it really is a good democratic way of getting ideas out there, working together, and ensuring that we have a commercial focus now, because that is the push for us in the marketing.
Okay, well that's good to hear. Let's move on a little bit then to the current crisis, which is COVID-19. I think the vast majority of Caribbean islands are now on the green list from the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Not all of them. Do you get up to speed with that, or do you leave that to other people to sort out, so to speak?
Well, let's put it this way. A lot of those countries are active members of the chapter. So it's important for us to really know who is able to do business, what type of environment they're doing business in. So yes, we are aware of the countries that are on the list. And we're also aware that, there are noticeably some missing that are very popular in this market. I mean, like, we work very closely with Forward Keys, who are renowned for their data and their analysis. And they've shared with us the list of top UK searches, since it's been announced that, certain destinations are opened up and, visitors can travel. We said to Forward Keys, what's happening? What are people looking for since this news has hit the marketplace? And we've been told that the top searches are Barbados, Cuba, Jamaica, Dom Rep, Antigua and Barbuda. So of course, one immediately notices that Cuba and the Dom Rep are missing from that list, and that's going to be important to the British traveller as well, because those are the destinations that they like. They like going to those destinations. But of course, it's now up to those destinations and their diplomatic teams to work with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and to see what may be the reason, or what's the reason why they haven't made it to that list, and what they have to do to get there. Because at the end of the day, for the entire Caribbean, health and safety is really important to us. And we wouldn't want to be in a position where, if it's felt that there are gaps, that we're not identifying them. But as I said, that, for the destinations that are included, we're really happy about it. For those that are not yet on the list, because it is constantly being revised, as the British government have said, we hope to see them there very quickly with the right health and safety requirements in place, if it's deemed that that is what has caused the gap. Okay,
cool. What about flights? I mean, one of the things I've heard on the grapevine is that, all these places are open. I spoke to Donovan White from Jamaica the other day. He was saying, we're all open for business now from July the 15th, which is next week. One of the issues appears to be flights. Are you, as an organisation, in regular contact with, our main carriage is Virgin Atlantic and BA, but also people like TUI, who have said, certainly as far as America is concerned, they're not doing anything until the end of the year. Are you in touch with them, and do you have a feel for when that might come back up?
We're in touch with the two main carriers to the Caribbean, both British Airways and Virgin Atlantic, and we do know their proposed schedules for flights out of the UK for visitors. And yes, you know, the tour operators, the hotels, everyone is working with them to ensure that we have as many people traveling as who want to travel and are able to travel. We also have to remember as well, and you know this as well, because I know you spend a lot of time in the Caribbean and you know you're familiar with everything, that the Caribbean has a very strong VFR market. And there are a lot of people who have families and investments and businesses in the Caribbean that they actually haven't been able to go to for the past 4 or 5 months. So when a lot of those flights open up, you'll also find that the VFR market will travel because they have a high level of confidence in the Caribbean. They've got, you know, assets there, and they feel safe to go. So many of the destinations in the Caribbean, I know that Grenada is one destination that has done this for sure, have immediately started with domestic tourism. They've said for the hotels that have opened up, you know, why don't you try out some of these procedures on the domestic? So there's been a lot of push to get people who live in the Caribbean experience the product, experience the protocol, share what's working, what's not working. On another level, there's been quite a bit of regional travel where airlift is possible, because in some cases people have chartered flights, etc. But there is a bit of regional travel taking place, because don't forget, in the Caribbean, you know, we share like banks, we share universities. So there is an element of business that is also traveling within the Caribbean. So really opening up to international visitors for us is almost like the third phase of getting back to normal per se. And yes, we know that the flights are going to be operating. We know that the VFR will support them first. And we also know that as consumer confidence grows, and people also find out about their own financial position, a lot of people are still on furlough. And sadly, we're hearing, I think it was last week we heard on the news that over 600,000 people had lost their jobs, you know, up until last week, or maybe it was in that week. I can't remember the exact, but the figure sticks in my mind. So of course, booking a long haul holiday is not going to be at the top of everyone's list, particularly until they know what's happening in the final quarter in terms of being furloughed, going back to work, being made redundant, starting all over again. So there are many economical factors, but the Caribbean is opening up for business. And for many of our destinations, it's phased: domestic, regional, international.
Okay, now as far as your tour operator is concerned, have you, you know, the relationship with these tour operators has been maintained throughout this period? Are they all still going to be running with the Caribbean? Have you had anybody saying, no, I'm not sure about that, I'm going to cut back, or everybody saying, can't wait?
Do you know, those who I've those who I've spoken to have said yes, they will continue with the Caribbean. The reality is that some of the programs will be slimmer. Why? It's what we've just said a bit before, that we know there are going to be less people traveling. So in terms of, and also the flights, you know, we're not going to have the same, I haven't got the frequency from every airline, but I'm going to assume that the frequency may not be there yet. So I think that we will see a level of cutting back, of less offerings, but at the end of the day, it's also down to the demand. The supply is there, the Caribbean is there, you know, but it's also down to demand, and it's down to airlift. And I think we will see. And don't forget as well, in the Caribbean, you know, we've always pushed like the whole cruise and stay program as well. You know, if people are going all the way to the Caribbean to cruise, then we've invited, you know, we would say to them, you know, spend a few extra days in the Caribbean. But until we know what's happening with the cruise industry, it's not going to be possible to do all the things we need to do. So we just have to wait and see.
Cool. The bottom line is that this year's going to be written off then, isn't it? You know, there's not going to be much international travel as far as the tour operators and leisure people are concerned in the Caribbean. Is that what you're saying?
You know, I don't think it's for me to say that it's going to be written off, but I will say that probably every single player or stakeholder has had to readjust the goalposts, the budget lines, etc. There has to be financial readjustments because we haven't had the opportunity to welcome visitors to the Caribbean probably from the middle of February up until now. So clearly there has to be an adjustment in what was the projected, you know, occupancy, revenue per available room, room nights, you know, there will be adjustments. So we're not going to write it off. What we're going to have to do is to make adjustments and see if we can meet what we have adjusted to, given the real circumstances that we face this year.
Now, the COVID, you know, you've mentioned a number of changes. You mentioned that, you know, and I've mentioned that the Caribbean has done extremely well in keeping the number of COVID-19 cases down. As a region, it's done very well. Is this an opportunity? You mentioned it earlier that you're one Caribbean, that you want to project the region as a whole. But you and I also know that there's been numerous attempts at that over the past decade, possibly even longer. But is this the time to grasp it? I mean, I know it's not in your hands individually, but you're obviously an influential person in the Caribbean. Is this the time to grasp it with both hands and say, right, now, let's do it now?
Well, Graham, definitely that's the message we've been, you know, putting out across the UK and Europe, certainly with our chapter members. We've been saying, look, you know, we know that, you know, we have individual road shows, we have individual showcases and stuff like that. But this year, we know that budgets have been slashed now, and we'll probably feel the impact of this in 2021. So now is the time to pool resources and to see how we can make better use of our marketing dollar. Now, of course, each destination has a different focus, a different mandate, and there will be some opportunities or market activity that a destination may feel that they want to go it alone. And absolutely, that's their right and their prerogative. But at the same time, if there are ways in which we can collaborate, particularly when we're targeting agents who hopefully are going to be rushed off their feet booking the Caribbean, we need to then ensure that when we're training and offering development programs, so that we try to collaborate so that we leave the frontline people more time and resources to spend trying to get as much business as they can. So yes, it does make sense, certainly on a chapter level, to collaborate, pool our resources and work together.
Good. Well, that's. I wish you the very best of luck on that one. I think finally, the whole world has been looking at the Black Lives Matter movement over the last 8 weeks, I suppose it is now. I don't know exactly. And I wondered if you, as a black woman living in the UK, born in the UK, whether you have any personal opinions about the racial diversity within the travel industry and how that may change or change for the better.
Well, sure. And as you stated, and I will state, these are my personal views, the personal views of Carol Hay. For me, Black Lives Matter is important in dealing with an issue right now. Now, Black lives have always mattered, and we should always continue to matter. But the focus is on Black lives right now because of what we've seen predominantly in the US, but also in other parts of the world. So it's an important message and one that I personally support. Number two, looking directly at our travel and tourism industry, there have been many events that I have attended over the decades that I've been involved in travel and tourism, and there have been hundreds of guests there. On some occasions, I've been the only Black person in the room, and on other occasions, I may be of a small cluster of Black people. And I always say that considering how important tourism is to Black countries, the Caribbean, Africa, and other parts of the world, why are we so underrepresented? So I think that first of all, it starts at opportunity. Black people place a lot of emphasis on education. So we tend to be highly educated. Even my former office team that I used to run for the CTO, I used to say that between the 6 of us, we had 11 degrees. So we place a lot of personal emphasis on being professionals. So the average young Black person who wants to enter the industry is likely to be qualified, even overqualified. For some reason, they're not making it past the interview stage. They're not getting an interview, or if they get an interview, they're not getting an opportunity. So I think all of that has to change. Tourism is about diversity, it's about culture and heritage. And I think the more that's reflected in the workplace, the more true we can be to what tourism really is about. I don't understand people who want to go to certain parts of the world, yet outside of that vacation experience, they have no desire to engage with people who reflect that side of the world. So personally, I am an advocate of diversity, inclusion, racial fairness, and equality. What I don't want is the Peter principle, where people will say, okay, we'll bring in a Black person and we'll give them that, and hopefully, you know, they might not do well, or they might. No, we just want to be treated fairly. Take color out of it. And when you have a vacancy, just interview people based off the skills, the knowledge and experience, and the fit for your organization. But that fit can't only be based off color. And I just think it's important to have equality, and it will make a massive difference, not only to tourism, but to this country, which we're all a part of, the United Kingdom. And I always say, if you look back at the Windrush and people of Caribbean heritage and a lot of the other Commonwealth countries, they have each time England has called, they have showed up. In the war, they showed up. To rebuild after the war, our families came. So now to feel that we don't matter, or we're not important, or we haven't made a contribution is wrong, because we've always been there and we always show up. And that is what I would like, you know, people to take away when Black people say Black Lives Matter. We've always been here, and we know we matter, and we want other people to understand we matter and we can make a difference. And that's just my thoughts.
Good. Carol, one can only endorse that. Thank you for your time this morning. I know you've probably had to get up early to make this appointment, so thank you. Thank you for that as well.
Not at all. My day starts very, very early every day. I start really early, so yeah, not getting up early. It's nearly lunchtime. I've had such a busy day.
Lovely. Carol, thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.
I'll see you soon, Graham. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.